Welcome back to our conference. I am really delighted to have with us for this conversation, Jaylene Tracy. Jaylene channels light-infused sound and energy to heal, soothe, and balance the emotional, mental, and physical body at all levels. She developed the modality vibrational genetics with guidance from the Mantis Collective and drawing on her training in molecular biology, Reiki, body talk, theta healing, and shamanism. Combining the guidance of her Mantis guide, Mari, with aspects of each of these methods, Jeilene offers a uniquely grounded metaphysical healing experience that is transformative and empowers clients to create changes for lasting health and vitality. Jeilene offers private healing sessions, webinars, courses, retreats, meditations, recorded tones, herbs, and a vibrant online community, the Light Vibes Network. You can find her at lightvibesnetwork.com. Thank you for being here, Jeilene.
Thank you, Chara, for having me. It's a
So
great
in
topic.
addition, and in addition to everything that I just read from your bio, I know from working with you and being part of your lovely Light Vibes monthly group, that a lot of where your work has been leaning in the last 2 years at least is not only on individual healing for people, but on what's going on planet Earth, what's going on with humanity. You've talked a lot about DNA upgrades we're experiencing, the spiritual partnership between humans and Earth. So although you do this amazing one-on-one healing work, a lot of what we'll talk about today will be these ways in which your work has been looking so much at the bigger picture. So to start with just a simple question, but it's what I know you've been thinking and talking about. How do you see the unfolding of the next stage of human life on this planet and our process of harmonizing more with Earth?
Yeah, it's such a good question to ask right now because we are, as humans, being activated so intensely right now by the energies that are available to us on Earth. Earth has been undergoing tremendous change, which I'm sure you've been. I know you're aware of it, but you've probably had other people talking about this as well, because I think we can all feel it. It's palpable, it's in the air, not only in the systems of humanity that we see shifting and changing, whether it's, geopolitical, the weather, whatever. So many different aspects of our experience here are changing, but that's all fueled by the massive changes that Earth herself are going through. And as her body and her energy field changes, because we as humans are extensions of her body, every molecule of our being comes from her body, right? And so the very breath that we take, which is what sustains us, the water we drink, the food that we eat, everything comes from her. And so we are continually changing and shifting in resonance with the way that she's changing and shifting. And so, our next steps as an evolutionary aspect of her is that we need to either give ourselves the opportunity to come lockstep with her in her evolution, or we will continually find ourselves in a more and more untenable place of existence that feels very difficult, very much at odds with what is going on around us. Life and our experience here will just start to seem more and more difficult. So that to me is really the big shift, is that it's really non-optional now for us to start bringing our awareness into what's going on energetically around us with planet Earth, and to start participating very actively, start to make really purposeful and active decisions about the way we live and about what we participate in and the way we express our energy, so that we are moving along at the same clip that Earth is.
Yes. So for people who want to engage with that more, what do we do?
Right. Well, that's a great question. There are lots of things that we can do on the more day-to-day mundane, and then there's a whole lot we can do in this sphere of energy as well. So on the mundane, the things that really I think are beneficial are to really ground ourselves into our body and to be very present, to practice anything that you practice, any activity that you do, whether it's art or exercise or meditation or being out in nature, anything you do that helps you get into your body and stay in your body is particularly important right now because getting into your body is like getting into earth because our bodies are part of earth. And so being in that space and being present in the moment that you're in is really the key. It's probably the main doorway to walk through to bring yourself into a resonance of equilibrium with earth. So that's number one. One of the great ways that is coming to mind right now too is just getting our hands in the dirt, gardening, feeling that connection into bringing life about and growing something that's part of Earth. That is very beneficial. And the plants and the animals of this planet have always been in equilibrium with Earth. They move along with her, they don't have any resistance to moving along with her energy. And so, spending time with animals and plants is also another really good way to ground yourself into the current energy. Watch the way they respond. They always say that animals know when an earthquake or tornado is coming, right? They know when the energy is shifted, the barometer's dropped, things are moving. They're always in tune with that because they have less blockages and they have less in the way of them feeling what all of us could be in tune with all the time as humans. So the rewilding of the human being is something that is important for us to think about right now. And the rewilding is really just a turning up the volume of our intuition again and learning to live as early humans did, learning to hear better out in the forest, learning to smell everything out in the forest, taking that moment to go out in nature and really listen and really smell and feel. What does the tree feel like? What does the dirt feel like? How does that sensory experience move through your body and what does it mean to you? So, spending time doing those kinds of activities really brings us back into focus of the here and now, which enables us to then enter through the doorway to begin to make the changes in the more energetic field. And you mentioned the DNA work, and that to me is something that's extremely important right now. That when we do walk through that doorway of the present moment, embodied in our physical being, that we then have that opportunity to begin to work with our DNA and to allow our DNA to upgrade itself in connection and in communion with Earth because Earth is certainly changing rapidly, and human beings are designed as very adaptable creatures because Earth is very adaptable. You could say the microbes that run this planet are incredibly adaptable, and we're 60 to 70% microbial, right? And so we, ergo, are also adaptable. But we shut that adaptation down sometimes with our stubbornness and our attachment into the way things were or the way we believe they should be. And so it takes a lot of fluidity of presence right now to move through these pretty dramatic changes that we're going through. And the DNA wants to change with Earth, but we need to come into a state of neutrality to allow that to happen. So as we do that, then our DNA is able to come into a resonant field of vibration that allows it to shift. And when I'm talking about DNA, I'm not just talking about the physical DNA. We have the physical DNA, but the physical DNA is surrounded by a morphogenic field of energy. And that energy carries with it your ancestral lineage, it carries with it your genetic lineage and the energies from your genetics and all the way down the line from your parents and grandparents and so forth. But it also contains all your Akashic information, right? And all of the information from your soul. So, all of that combined creates this field of energy around your DNA that is the true epigenetic source of shifting the expression of your DNA. And there's those areas in the non-coding regions. We used to call them junk DNA, but now we call them non-coding. But they actually are being coded and expressed because we know that the human genome is only coding and producing a very small number of genes, something in the low 20,000s. And we also know that the microbiome of our body contributes a tremendous amount of genetic data, but there is absolutely more genetic data that is managing, controlling our physical presence and the way our body functions. And so there are things happening in those non-coding regions. And it is the belief that I have then from what the guides have told me that those in those non-coding regions are areas of our DNA that are now starting to come up online. They say that only a small percentage of our DNA is really being utilized and is functional. And that is because some of it has been dampened down, some of it is through years and years of, you could say, focus on survival. There's all kinds of things we could point to in our evolution that have pointed to dampening down of certain aspects of our DNA being expressed. But certainly right now, there are tremendous opportunity to start activating those areas in the non-coding regions. And that to me is probably the best place for us to spend our energy.
Okay. And so what I want to ask is how we do that. But for people who are maybe really trying to catch up with this big context you've given,
Yeah.
this is not only about the future of human survival on planet Earth, it's about us sort of clearing, working with, benefiting from each of our soul's pasts, our ancestral and genetic lineages, and going through a DNA upgrade to become the next level versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what then is people are thinking, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How?
Right. So the what then is that we begin to embody more and more of our soul energy, more and more of our higher selves. It's not possible to embody a tremendous amount of your soul energy, your oversoul, your higher self, however you want to refer to it, when we are vibrating in a frequency that is not matching our higher self, right? We've got to match the frequency of our higher self in order to embody more of it. And partially, this has been difficult for humans to maintain that connection into their higher self. You know, you might get glimpses of it, but you don't maintain it for long periods of time or like a full day. In the rare cases, you may, or you may have some sort of, expansive experience, but then it sort of fades away and you wonder, like, where did that go and how do I get that back? That is because of the way our DNA is expressing itself and the way it's vibrating. And so the what happens is that we begin to embody more and more of our higher selves. And imagine if you've ever done a meditation and you can feel yourself channeling your higher self and all of the wisdom that comes in, all of the memory. Think of all the experiences you've had in your other lifetimes that are just there in that Akashic field. So to me, an energy feels like a giant sphere that we're part of. And we could and would have access to all of that information and all of everything we've experienced. And yes, some experiences have been difficult, but when we come into a place of neutrality around those experiences, then they become more of a teaching tool as opposed to a burden. And we expand because of those experiences as opposed to contracting, right? And so that's really what I see as the main purpose of the upgrades of our DNAs. We embody more and more of our higher self, but we do so as a physical being. That's sort of the big kahuna, is embodying your soul in a physical being. I think it's probably the hardest thing to do, especially in the vibrational atmosphere we find ourselves in, right? In this third dimension, which you could say arguably many people are able to begin to hold an awareness of higher octaves of frequency and get into those higher dimensions. But most people are not, right? And I really want a lot of people, I really want, the masses to get into this place of regularly vibrating and matching their higher self so that we can begin to have a more peaceful experience here. That's what I see. We begin to have more peace and less fighting. There's less of a need of the nervous system to constantly drive you into survival and violence. If you feel satiated and if you feel calm and peaceful, you don't feel like you've got to, it's all about me and mine and take care of me and my family and everybody else is on the defensive, right?
Right.
It removes that defensive stance that human beings have been in and it calms that nervous system down. And so that would be a huge benefit to Earth and to all humans.
Yeah, I appreciate the way you said that. And I think that's a really nice way to help define this new earth that people are talking about. And it is exactly as you say, that more and more of us step into this higher vibrational endeavor of embodying our higher selves and coexisting together more at the upper end of the octave of what humanity is capable of rather than the lower end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you teach a lot of practices, both meditative and kind of body care and wellness. What's feeling like the best toolkit right now for people who really want to be on this path? What are you seeing as important currently, either in
Yeah,
terms of spiritual practice or bodily practices?
right. Yeah, so I as you mentioned, I have my Light Vibes community, and every month I bring in a new topic and that is reflective. I call it in the field because it's reflective of what's going on in the moment. And what they've really been peppering in, I can see the pattern now when I look back over the last 6 months, is that last summer we started working on clearing the morphogenic field of the DNA. And so for a toolkit, they've told me that it's all fine and good to talk about all of the metaphysical and the ascension and the 5D and all of that. But if you are still operating in the wheels of karma down at the lower levels of experience, um, regardless of how much you're meditating or what you're doing, if you're still engaging in those wheels of existence and you feel like your life is sort of a drama, trauma, cause and effect, then until you are able to ascend out of that and get some awareness and create some neutrality in your emotional and physical responses to your life and to your atmosphere, your environment, um, it's very difficult for you to actually embody any of the other opportunities that we have right now. So they always say that's step number one. And we started working on that with the clearing of the morphogenic field of the DNA because once you can create some space between you and your life, then you can begin to observe it and see areas of things that you are either attracted to or repulsed by the way you're moving in or you're moving away from something, and how you can start to recognize your behavior. It's all about awareness. Really, awareness is the first step. I'm aware that I am doing these things. I'm aware that I'm holding my body tight, in a particular way, and that's creating tension in my body and pain. I'm aware that I'm responding every time this comes up, I'm responding a particular way. So number one is awareness, and also being aware that there's work to be done and that there's energy to be cleared. We have, many of us, been called to do a lot of clearing of our morphogenic field, but for those who have been just experiencing a lot of difficulty but not have put it two to two together, that like, okay, so actually what I need to do here is start to clear some of this energy out of my field. So that's really step number one before we can start all of the other sort of yummy stuff that will catapult us into what they've called humanus potentius, right? Until we can reach our potential, we need to sort of clear the deck and create a neutral space for
Yeah.
for the new to arise from. And so I
Yeah.
think that's number one. And then number two is then to start stepping into doing those activities that begin to upgrade and engage the DNA. There are other people I've noticed, other healers out in the world that are also calling or I would say responding to that clarion call from Earth and from some of the beings like the Arcturians, the Pleiadians that have been engaged and interested in helping Earth for a very long time. They're making their presence very well known at this time, and they're spending a lot of concentrated effort on helping us move through this transition. And I think that for those that are responding to that call and working with them to bring the upgrades that are possible to our DNA to this planet, um, they, I am a source of it. There's many other people who are a source of it, but find somebody that can help you move through this time and start to upgrade your DNA because it really is all about the DNA because we're physical beings.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about this first step of lightening the load of trauma, essentially, from this lifetime and other lifetimes,
Yep.
and then being able to really start experiencing some of the DNA upgrade.
Right. Because the trauma that is experienced in other lifetimes was not done so to torture us, right? It was done as another facet of experience. And until we can convert what we perceive as trauma into a neutral place where we perceive it as an experience that helped us gain data, helped us gain experience, helped us gain perspective and awareness, then we can't get beyond it. You can't even see around it sometimes, right? You can't release yourself from the wheels of karma if you're constantly driven by something that's happened to you. You've got to get to a place where you are no longer locked in based on your experiences, whether they're in this lifetime or in another lifetime. The way that the earth is vibrating and the way that her energy field has opened up and become very porous, we are getting so activated by our past lives, our Akashic records. It's almost as if she like opened the kimono and she took away all of the filters that she had around herself. And now I just feel like, we're getting constant flow of Akashic information and energy from different planets and from our sun and from Helios. I feel like all of this plasma radiance is coming in and it's just really bringing everything up to the surface. And so the option is deal with it or get very triggered by it, right? And have a lot of experiences that are very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you tend to use sound clearing techniques for a lot of this clearing. You
Mm-hmm.
will tone for people, you do special kinds of toning and sound work with your guides for people, and you're also teaching people who work with you to do this toning and clearing for themselves, which is
Mm-hmm.
really empowering. And I know I've heard you say that you think that's really important, that it's wonderful for people to seek the assistance of a healer, but one of the things we're stepping into is more and more of us learning to self heal and to negotiate this process more independently, although still, of course, with support when needed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And thanks for that reminder because that is really another aspect that the guides bring in a lot is that they want us to know that when we heal ourselves, we are healing Earth because we are a part of her body. And that the more we can learn to feel empowered to heal ourselves, the more we connect to engage in the love of self and the recognition that self deserves to heal and that it is deserving of your time and your attention when we heal self. And the natural aspect of healing self is that we begin to heal others around us as well. So the Mantis have brought in a whole course to teach people, as you mentioned, their healing modality that they taught me years ago, and it's been really wonderful to see it ripple out into the community and to hear the stories from people already and the feedback of how the healing has been working for them and for others. And it's really something that is not very difficult for us as humans. I think we're all natural healers, and I think we're all naturally very intuitive. There are just blocks in the way, right? There's things that have occurred to us that cut us off from our memories and from our understanding of ourselves as healers. We've been taught to look outside ourselves for care and for healing. And truly, the mantis come and step in at this time, and they say, "No, no, no, no. You really, you don't need, you don't need to go outside of yourself. You just need to get to know your energy field. You need to get to understand the underpinnings of the physical issues that you're experiencing, where they come from. And as you learn that, then you share that with others." So the mantis are also the ones that taught me to do the toning. And because sound is such a fundamental part of the expression of our DNA and of every being on this planet with DNA, because everything is humming, every molecule, every atom is vibrating and creating a hum or a tone with that vibration. And so it makes sense that every cell has a resonant frequency, every tissue, every organ, every system in the body, and then there's the whole body itself. We know that the heart has its own song, the brain has its own song. So when we start to tune in to those frequencies and those sounds, we can start to match them and bring them back into a place of balance. And that's a lot of what their work is about. And very helpful for this time when it's difficult to move through change and feel your body shifting and not always doing what we want it to. Um, but learning that, oh, there's something I can intervene here and be a part of. And that by doing that and by honoring self, I'm also honoring earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate the way that you just emphasized how the work of self-healing is also the work of healing the collective, because it seems to me that a lot of us are gaining much more insight about that
Mm.
recently. We used to depict those two things as separate, right? You're either contributing actively in the world or you're working on yourself, but they're separate. And
Very true.
I often think that a lot of the, you know, well-intentioned activism of recent decades has so often come out of wounded parts of ourselves. And sometimes
Mm.
it's been very successful and meaningful, whether we're talking about in the wellness sector or political rights or equality or justice or environmental work. But it seems like we're coming to this all new level where people recognize that the most powerful contributions in activism arise as or after you've done some very powerful self-healing. And if all you do is the self-healing and just kind of live as a regular private individual, you're still making a big contribution, because so often, and I've really seen this in the last couple of years for myself, so often what we're trying to resolve on our personal path is also a problem in the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
So, to give a quick example, something that you and I have talked about is patterns of, say, parasitism or codependency in human relationships that a lot of people are learning through and cleaning up. And then I've realized, well, we do that to the earth. We are parasitic on the earth. We're parasitic on one another in our relationships, and then we're parasitic on the earth. And so anybody who is working to resolve, for example, the parasitism or the codependence in human relationships, I think is really helping to clear that energy generally on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I think also that when we um, start to clear the energies of our traumas and bring more awareness to how those experiences are affecting us and our relationship to Earth, and whether we're in some sort of disequilibrium with our relationship with either a loved one or Earth itself, that we come into a place of neutrality. And the guides talk about this a lot. They talk about how human beings through their energy fields and through the very strong energy of our emotions, right? I mean, can you imagine that Earth's had all these children, right? All 8 billion of us, or how many we are, right? And that we're all, like, not all of us, but a huge proportion of us are vibrating in a way that is of a difficult emotion. And you can only imagine what that would feel like to her, right? So I believe that the guides come and talk to us about creating neutrality and creating evenness and beginning to learn how to master the expression of our emotions, not to become drones and not to become lifeless or disengage with our human experience, but quite to the contrary, to begin to create an evenness of flow so that Earth herself doesn't have to struggle so much to wade through our emotional frequencies in mass to continue her evolution, right? I believe that a lot of the guides are really in service to Earth and humanity sort of as a byproduct. But I know the mantis and the Arcturians really are engaged in helping humans because it helps Earth. And that I would say Earth is such an amazing soul that has such a big role to play in the evolution of many other planets and the universe itself, that I feel like there's a lot of attention for her soul and her evolution, and that because we are appendages of hers, that we get the attention as well, but we're not the main we're not the main target, right? We are a part of sort of her symptoms, right?
Yeah. 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 Well, we could talk about that for a long time, but
Yeah,
I want to respect your time today. So we will mention for people briefly toward the end how they can work with you and some things you're
yeah,
offering. But do you feel like you want to bring in a channeled message, or
sure,
should we just talk a
sure.
little bit more?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
let's see. Yes, we are going to connect with the mantis. And the first thing that I'm feeling from them, they really want to bring in is this message of the connection into how much love that they do have for human beings. And perhaps because of my last statement, that they're really focused on the earth. But they love humanity as well. They love human beings because we are a part of Earth's body. And the love that they have for us comes from that deep well of compassion that they are very tuned into. And that an aspect of human experience right now that is coming online and is very important to continue to express is that well of compassion that resides within each one of us. Compassion for self is always the place to start. And then from that blossoms out the compassion for others and the compassion for earth. If we want to live in a sustained and in a beautiful place that feels like it is being nurtured and connected and aware of itself, then we must do so from a place of compassion and first for ourselves. And from that compassion grows the flower of compassion for self, others, and for earth. And that is always a reflection from the self back to the self. Compassion always creates a mirror of beauty for us to look into. Compassion is a place for us to all start, and it is also a place for us to come back home to. It is always part of the frequency of our heart. It lives inside of us. It is an inherent part of our frequency. It is not something that you have to learn or to develop. It is something you just must remember and connect back into. We are naturally, as human beings, drawn to be compassionate, and yet we see in our experience as humans that many humans are also drawn into states of reactivity, fear, and violence. And that reactivity, fear, and violence comes from the divorce of compassion. It comes from the loss and the fear of self. It comes from not being fully embodied, not being fully connected to who and what we are. So truly, it is our journey. It is to move from a place of disconnection and the belief that we are somehow separate while we are here, and to heal that wound, and to do so through the heart. And as we develop our expression of compassion, all of the cracks and the fissures in the heart, and then subsequently all of the cracks and the fissures in our energy field begin to seal and begin to heal as we express compassion, because that is the vibrational frequency of the universe that is operating in a smooth fashion, that is operating from a place of nurturing and care. And it is possible for it to occur on this planet, but the collective you could say the collective immune system and the collective nervous system of humanity needs to dial way down. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be quite a number of humans that begin to recognize that they are living in a highly reactive and unconscious state, and come into their bodies, come into a very present moment focus, and to dial down that reactivity reaction, dial down that, let's see, dial down the way that their nervous system is cranking up the expression of their immune system and cranking up the expression of their fear and their anger, and bring themselves back into the heart and back into that place of connectivity, remembering that they're not here alone. They don't have to do it alone. No one is ever alone. You're never alone while you're here. We are around you. We are supporting you. We are supplying energy for this experience that you're having. We nurture you through the fields of energy that hold you and cradle you. And so you have the backing of many, many beings who wish to see the evolution of Earth and all creatures upon her. If you were to see the web of life that has been created on this planet from our perspective, the miraculous development of all of these expressions of DNA on this planet, the amazing combination of life and the way that it intricately works with each other, the way it supports each other and builds a scaffolding of energy and of life and of experience on this planet, it is like no other place. Although there are other planets that also experience evolution in similar ways and go through a process of moving from an unconscious to a more conscious embodied state, and are in a location away from a sun that allows them to have enough of the building blocks for DNA to thrive in, they do not possess the exact location, they do not possess the exact energy signature of Earth. Her energy signature is rare, it is special. And we are in honor, in deep honor of her as a being. And every minute life that exists as part of her being. And humans are certainly a big part of that. And you are unique in that the way your consciousness enters your physical being allows you to transcend the muck and the mire, the swamp, and to come into an elevated place of viewpoint, an elevated place of experience, and an elevated and neutral place of expression, so that you can move along with Earth and evolve with her, as well as continue your own soul's evolution. So you move lockstep with Earth, but you also move at your own pace. And we are all evolving in the same direction, but we are moving at different speeds, and we are having each of our own experiences while also still being part of the whole. So the analogy of being the drop of water but still part of the ocean is the way you should think about it. You are an individual, and yet you are always, always part of the whole. You are never alone. Loneliness, isolation, those are the two things that keep humans thinking they're separate. There is no separation. There's no one to fight. You're only fighting yourselves. So coming back into that recognition of the wholeness of who you are and the truth of your being will allow you to turn the dial down on that reactivity of the nervous system and of the immune system and come into a place of peace and balance for the continuation of your evolution and that of Earth's. We support you. We love you. We are always here. We bring our energy to help you understand how you can heal others, Earth, and yourself. We will always be a constant presence in your life. We'll always be a constant presence with Earth. We have been charged with being a part of her experience. We've been here from the beginning. We've been here from before her beginnings, and we will always remain. We are at her service. We are at your service. We are at the service of all that is. Peace be with each and every one of you. And thank you.
Thank you, Jeilene. One of the things I was thinking as that came through is that this ethos of compassion for oneself and for all life reminds me of the beautiful, it started as a sermon and then has been published as an essay, written by the Nobel laureate and great humanitarian Albert Schweitzer right after World War I. And what's really moving to me right now, so his essay sermon was called Reverence for Life. And what's really moving and inspiring to me right now is that we have so many more tools right now at this time than a century ago. I mean, Schweitzer's sermon is now just over a century old. We have so much more awareness and so many more spirituality and wellness tools, and even like social connection and social justice and psychological healing tools to help us to really go into the next step of actually enacting and living this reverence for life, this deep compassion for the self as life and for all life on the planet. So that, I think, is showing up in your work, is really bringing forth a lot of tools to help us do this, step to this next level.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's true. It is the next level for humanity is to move into an operating system that is quite different from the one we've been using, right?
Yeah.
One we've been using is very much harkens back to our early days on this planet when survival had to be number one, and now we
And
have a new way of
competition.
surviving. Yeah,
Yeah.
competition, but really that's not the way nature really
No.
really operates at its finest. We know that now it's through cooperation,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
symbiosis, right?
I wrote a paper about that recently,
Hmm.
just barely, I mean, of course, I'm not a scientist, but pointing to this whole conversation in the natural sciences, all of the research starting to show that the story of life on this planet actually is probably more one of collaboration than competition. And that is paradigm shifting. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see that showing up in the sciences,
Absolutely.
because that's just the scientific version of what the mantis just said to us.
It absolutely, and we have so many examples of collaboration in nature with organisms and animals, and even in our own bodies, we have mitochondria in our bodies, right? That were once thought to be external microbes that came inside, right? And they supply energy for us, and we supply nutrients for them. So there's all these kinds of symbiotic relationships everywhere we look if we just open our eyes to them. And the stories are wonderful and they're uplifting. When I listen to a story about how organisms are working together, it gives me hope that humans can be as intelligent as the tiny creatures on this planet and also begin to live that way. We can use them as our teachers and as our good examples for a path forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for offering us
Yeah, thank you for
such a
having me.
clear version of what we're experiencing right now.
Thank you.
if people want to work with you, just review how people can do that.
Yeah, so you mentioned I do private sessions. So those are available to my Light Vibes members. I'm also actually going to open that up on my main website again. So you can find that on my main website. Light Vibes members get a discount on my sessions, a pretty significant discount. So that's an option. The Light Vibes group is really a great way to connect with me as well. We meet a couple times a month, and I put in a lot of information there. Plus, there are 3 years of information in there that is all cataloged from what we've been moving through, and lots of meditations and activations. We do a live meditation with the sound healing a couple times a month, and as well as the other posts that I'm putting up there. And there's a connections in the field where you can join the group and ask any questions that you might have, like a mini session for yourself in a group setting. And there's just a lovely group of people that comes to that every month. And so probably the best way to connect with me is to join the Light Vibes group and get access to my work that way, and tons of meditations in there. It's really reasonable. And then also to do a private session is another way to work specifically on your issues and sort of clearing the decks for your DNA to start the upgrades and to begin to bring in that energy for the DNA, I think is really a good option for people right now.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us for this event.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful, wonderful topic and event, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Visit newearth1.com.